So I'm here with my good friend Janet, and she's been an integral part of getting my book off the ground in the last year and a half. So we're just having one of our conversations about the process and the help she's been and how we've worked together to get this to this stage. So hi,
Hello,
Janet.
everyone. Hello, and thank you, Kathy, for inviting me to have this conversation today.
Mhm. Oh,
It's
great.
been it's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. When we met about a year and a half ago at a party at a friend's house, we started talking a little bit about what we did, and we had that instant connection. Hey, we had so many similar
Right.
interests and passions.
And it's turned into me having the great fortune of having read your book, 3 or 4 times. And I had posted on my own page the other day that every time I've been through your book, I've learned something more. I've been ready to digest the next piece. And I find the book, there's so many applications to my own life, but I really see your book that's coming out as something that anyone could relate to and find useful. I can see myself even now going back many times, but it's been quite a treat for me to be able to read it and keep the secrets of it guarded until it's published.
Love to hear that, Janet, because I feel like there's practices, there's possibilities, but I really think that our lives as women, they change so much over time. So it's wonderful to hear that it's helpful for you at this stage in sort of rewiring or retirement, whatever we want to call this phase of
Mhm.
had a wonderful career, but you still have lots to offer, right? So what are some of the
Right.
thinking about lately as you read the book? What's something that stood out for you?
Well, right now, what I'm thinking about is how you talk about getting up every morning and starting your day exactly how you want to, and sort of setting a tone for the day, choosing intentions, and then putting those into action and living the life that you have in your mind and you put it into play and what that's done to benefit you. And I keep trying all your different suggestions and exercises and techniques.
Mm. Well, and it is so personalized. That's one of the things I believe about thriving is that it looks different for each of us. And so we need to figure that out, right? We don't necessarily know that formula, what that is, but I just had a most amazing weekend celebrating my 60th birthday, which was so fun to have family around. And but today I was back in my own house and I set my alarm for 7:30 and I was so excited to get up and I do some games, but I read some inspiring words from a yoga book that I keep handy and did a little journaling about what was going to happen today and went to yoga. And it was just, and then I met somebody new that I'd connected with on LinkedIn. So it was just, this is a great day. My everyday, ordinary life brings me such joy. So I had fun with my family and going away and doing some vacation things, but I just love to start my days that way. I feel grounded and it's a little slow and I feel like I'm more fully myself when I get to do that instead of rushing around or just jumping up and being with people right away. So that personal work just grounds my days and helps me say what's important today. What am I going to do?
Mm, exactly. Kathy, my role in the book has been to help give some feedback and um, look at some editing and even the process of publishing and promoting, etc., just from my own experiences. But I wanted to ask you more about how long have you had this feeling that there's a book in you that needs to get written?
Such a great question. You know what? I think I had a dream list back in my late 20s, and writing a book was on that list. So it's been a seed. I've always been a reader. You can see my professional library behind me there. So I've always loved reading. My writing has I've written in a journal for 40 years, but writing other things, I would do a little bit of that during my career. But it was really after I finished my doctorate, one of my supervisors that was in my my defense said, you should write a book. And it was like, oh, really? But I didn't know how to do that. And life was very full at that time. I was a principal. I was going through a divorce, running a household by myself, running a school by myself. And so I didn't get to it. So that was in 2012 when I finished that research. But as I shared my learnings more in conference settings and stuff, I could hear that it was resonating with people. Other women were saying, what's it like? What, I'm a mom. Can I still do that? Or what makes that doable? So I had these encouraging remarks that suggested to me that there might be a market for some of what I had learned. And so I kept thinking about it. And one of my things that I did when I started writing, I had a folder just called Just Write Something. And so I might reflect on a book I was reading or a movie I'd seen, because I knew it was like getting in the habit of writing something. And it was probably crappy. Anne Lamott calls it your crappy first draft, but writing, sitting down and putting your thoughts on paper, on computer, was part of that. But it was really moving to Nova Scotia 3 years ago where I was like, okay, I'm ready. I need to do this. And I watched
And
Lynn.
so
Yeah.
what I'd like to ask is, I love the title. If you could repeat the title, and then how did you come up with that title?
Well, the title is Women Thriving in Leadership, Practices for Cultivating Wholeness and Community. So I just came up with the title about a year ago. I think I had many other titles first. So don't let the title hold you back if you're thinking about a book. So I would give sessions called Embracing Your Leadership Narrative at a conference. So that was an early title that I thought of. And then I'm like, oh, are people going to know what that means? And then, like I said, just write something. I started writing, and so it was partway into the writing where it was like, this is about practices. Or I heard people talk about wellness, and then they said, well, nobody tells you how to do that though, to take care of yourself. So I'm like, oh, this is about practices. And so it really evolved. It really evolved over time. And I think it was last summer, and the idea of thriving or flourishing, I played around with those words, which one is better, and I thought it might be thriving. And so I kind of chose certain words. Oh, it's practices, it's thriving, it is about leadership. And then I didn't have women in it. It was like leadership practices for thriving. And so I kept playing, rearranging them. And then I think last summer, and I have whiteboards in my studio where I write. And so I put that up there and look at it and think about it and cross things out and rejig it. So each of the words is really a juicy word, because it is about women, 12 female participants, not just my experience. And a lot of the time I wasn't thriving when I was in a leadership position. I was really surviving or struggling. So I wanted to focus on what we could control, what we could do.
Mhm.
And wholeness, community, those have been concepts. They're woven through the whole book. So
What I really like about the book is that it could be read and be useful by anyone. Yes, it's focused on women, but I think it's applicable to just about anyone. It could be used by professionals. It could be used by educators, just because, well, that's your background. It's also my background. But I think anyone could make use of this book in order to thrive, to move from survival to thriving. I wanted to ask you, what about the process once you got going and were really heavy into it? What was that task like of putting the book together? You know you're doing it now and you're really in the groove. What was that like?
oh boy. Well, I had to exercise some discipline. I wanted to do it, but I had to set things up. So I'm very visual. So I had little calendars from a writing course that I did. And so I would put a check mark, put a sticker every day that I sat down and did some writing. And so my practice was more writing a little bit most days. Some people go away to a cabin for a month and write 8 or 10 hours a day. I found I couldn't write more than an hour or two a day. And I had other commitments. I'm not working full time, but I've got volunteer commitments and I teach courses. And so that was what I found was doable. So sometimes it was just write something. And then I'd I wrote chapters that were around 1,000 words, which I could kind of draft that in an hour or two and feel like I could do it. And then I'd write something and I'm like, oh, I already wrote that before. So then I'd start to structure, have I got enough here? And so writing and reading have been really engaging. So I'd read a book. I love the book by Heather Platt, The Art of Holding Space. And she had 3 sections. So I was like, I like that. I think it's going to have 3 sections. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is the part about who am I and what do I want to offer the world. So that's my first section. And then it did grow out of my doctoral work. So when I got to that section, I was like, oh, I've got some writing on this already. And I was sort of stuck. So I took some of my dissertation work and I edited it because I really wanted it to be accessible to everyone. Like you say, I was thrilled to hear you say anyone could benefit from this because it might
Um,
be a textbook, but I didn't want it to read like a textbook. I wanted it to be.
so the first part of all that creating, you're working somewhat by yourself, and then you move into the publishing and editing phases. So what kind of learning were you doing as that was happening, this being your first book?
Yeah. Oh boy. It took a lot, Janet, for me to share my writing. I'd had an experience many years ago where I shared some writing and somebody said to me, this isn't about teaching, this is about Kathy. Who would want to read that? So I had this inner critic, who cares what you have to think, Kathy? And so I had to overcome that. And so your encouragement, Janet, of this is helpful. Yes, it needs some work in editing, but people will be helped by this. So I had to overcome my fears of people's judgment or thinking it wasn't worthwhile to say there are some people who would benefit or who would be helped by that. So that was big. And then about a year ago in the spring, I had drafted about 2/3 of it. So I had the section about personal practices for leadership, pursuing wholeness. I had reworked my doctoral work with other participants and their stories of living and leading authentically. And then I started reaching out to publishers. And so what does it take? How much does it cost? With this, and I started with books that I had liked, and I contacted that publisher and said, "Oh, would you be interested in this?" And there's things you have to write. Who's your target audience? What's your elevator speech? And I found a year ago I was ready to fill those things out, so I put it out there, and I was okay. And I was like, "That's what I could do." And then I wasn't crushed when I heard back, "Oh, our lineup is full for next year, but here's somebody else you could talk to." So I just there was a lot of personal growth about I want to do this, and so I'll just find a way to make that happen. And then I set a goal last year, and I turned 59, and I was like, darn it, this book needs to get out in the world the year I'm 60. So I set some deadlines for myself. Once I had that, I knew I was going to have a developmental editor. And I said, end of July, I'm going to send it to her the end of July. And so setting some deadlines really helped me to be accountable to myself and other people to have a draft done. And then I learned my dad was not doing well. And I was like, oh. And often that happens. You set a big goal and then life puts a barrier in your way. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to keep writing. Maybe I won't finish it, but I'll spend some time with my dad. I'll talk to him every day and I'll keep writing. And I met that deadline. And then I went through, right? So deadline, doing research, talking to people, hearing from you, sharing it with people to say this is worthwhile and what can I change to make it more effective, and really growing from that early time of uh, you know
Yes, and even just learning what the publishing process is like once you have a publisher.
yes,
it- yeah, if you haven't been through it before,
yeah,
you don't know all the phases, and you think you've sent your final copy in, and then there's the next
right,
phase that you weren't expecting, etc. And
Right.
And here we are today. And so I think my final question for now is, what do you see the next several weeks looking like?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Where are we at in the process?
Where are we at? So I did what I think is the final sign off on Monday. And so within a week or so, it should be available on Amazon. It's also available on the Friesen Press bookstore. That's my publisher. And then I will order copies myself. So if you're in my neighborhood in Nova Scotia or in Edmonton, I'll have copies to sell personally. And then it's getting the word out because I've been so encouraged by the feedback from friends who've been noticing and saying, hey, tell me when it's ready. And then keeping getting the word out in various ways. So events, podcasts, conversations like this, I'm excited to share because I'm in such a good place in my life, and I want other women and really everybody to be tuned into what they love, what they want in their life, and stepping towards that so they can thrive and believe it's going to lead to good things. And you follow those desires.
I can say that I see this book being used in your own practices, perhaps like in your teaching at university, or when you're running sessions for leadership participants in workshops. I see it in community circles. I've seen people respond saying, our book club needs to read this. And I'm like, yes, they do. That's my thought when I read that comment. And I hope, I'm looking forward to maybe some in-person meetups where you're promoting your book or signing copies, all the things that go along with having a book be launched.
I'm so excited about all of those things that you said. So yeah, and thank you for your part in the journey, the questions you've asked me, the support, and then other times saying this came across as too critical, and that was really helpful feedback for me to make adjustments, because it's really about helping others step into their best life and what they want. So not about criticizing anyone else's choices, but helping them feel empowered to live their best life because it's a great place to be.
Well, I'm so fortunate to be able to reflect on what I've read in your book almost daily. And I'll be excited when it's not just me and one or two others who have been let in, and that I can have these conversations with other readers of your work. So, yeah, it's an exciting season to see this happen and have come to fruition after many, many hours of long, hard work. So, congratulations.
Thank you, Janet. I don't know if I could have done it without you, or it wouldn't be ready now. So it's and this is what I found too. We thrive in community by gathering around like-minded people.
We sure do.
Yeah. So thank you for everything you've done. It's been amazing.